As we all know, sales and marketing is the lifeblood of any business. Well, in the past few weeks, my business has been on life support. We fired one salesperson and then the other fell ill, which meant I'd gone from 2 salespeople down to 0 in a matter of weeks. Whilst I had already hired someone else, they weren't going to start for about a month. I was now left in the position where I had to train our new salesperson to do around about $40,000 per month, and I had to train her in just 2 weeks. On top of this, the sales process was outdated, incorrect, and completely broken. In this video, I'm going to show you how I fixed my sales process, trained a new member of staff in just 2 weeks, and how I did it all and the process I used so you can implement it in your own business. The first thing I needed to do was remove all of the repetitive and boring tasks. Not only would this give the new sales rep more time and give any future sales reps more time, but on top of that, it meant that there were additional items the new person I hired was not having to learn. I didn't want them to be bogged down in repetitive tasks and tasks that quite frankly were not a high priority. What I did is I used an app called Loom and I recorded screen videos in order to train a virtual assistant. This got the virtual assistant up and running within about a week because a large part of those other processes were automated. They really just have to click a few buttons. And again, this is a huge tip. If anything you can outsource to a virtual assistant, whether it's for project managers, salespeople, for any other team members in your organization, I would highly recommend that as a first step. We've had a sales training guide for years, but it had got out of date, it had got broken and just wasn't correct anymore. A sales training guide is one of the most important elements you could have because it's going to allow you to bring new people into the business and get them trained up in record time. The next part of this video is going to be all about what I put in the guide, how I structured the guide so that you can create one of these for your own business. I always start off these guides with a brief intro, which is really summarized in about 1 paragraph. And the key point with this 1 paragraph is to get people to understand the key thing they have to focus on. So even if they forget everything else, what's the one key thing to focus on that is going to get them through? For us in the publishing business that I own, publishingpush.com, that number 1 thing is to get someone to submit their manuscript. So the first thing we want to do is get that from an author. So whatever that might be for your sales process, figure out what that most important step is that leads to everything else and make sure that that is your guiding principle. Make sure to like the video, subscribe and follow along. I'm going to do a lot more videos like this. Comment below as well with any thoughts you might have on sales training or questions that you might have. So then moving on from that, I focused again on 2 main points. You can see how I try and keep the guide as concise as possible and make sure that it focuses on the most important things. Those 2 things are what differentiates us from our competitors. So 99% of businesses are going to be asked this. How are you different from everybody else? What can you give me that other people can't? And then inevitably there are going to be objections. So the next thing you have to create is a list of ways for your sales team to overcome those objections that people may bring up. Make sure you watch all the way to the end because I'm going to give you a bonus tip that if you do nothing else, this bonus tip will definitely get your business more sales. Every business should have a sales script. And the reason for this is if you don't know exactly what your salespeople are saying, then there's a high likelihood they're going to start going off topic, they're not going to stick to the main point, and they're not going to deliver and get across the most important things that you need them to do. I also find that a sales script is incredibly important because you might have a situation where your salesperson is tired or distracted or they've got other things going on. And so their brain might wander during the sales call. Not ideal, but it might happen. And having a sales script is going to give them something to constantly come back to, keep them on the path and make sure that they don't lose their way, they don't kind of get confused, and they might have a difficult customer as well. So this sales script is just something they can always come back to. And a key point with a sales script is that it means you know what your salespeople are saying. Of course, you should be listening to calls, but this is going to give you a good idea of what they're saying. And then you can make adjustments and tweaks to this. So you can go back and change certain segments, certain parts of your sales script, and then say, okay, did that have an impact on the conversion rate? Did we sell more that month when we made the change to the sales script? It's going to give you some more data to go from. The next thing when I was recreating my sales script is I got my hands dirty. I got on the phone and I spoke to customers. And this is something I think all business owners should do, is actually try and jump into some of the roles of the people in your team, because it's going to open up insights that you just wouldn't get otherwise. And this allowed me to learn a huge amount about what was broken in our sales process and what I could do to improve it and have a meaningful impact, which is going to lead to more sales. The other major benefit is what I did is, whilst I was on these sales calls, I would make notes at certain points in the sales call. So I would say, okay, at 4 minutes 50, they asked a good question about this and I dealt with it. That's going to give someone really good training on how to answer that specific question, and did this throughout the call. At 10 minutes, make sure you listen to this section. It also meant that it saved time, because when I hired a new salesperson, they didn't have to then listen to hours and hours of phone calls. They could listen to the most important points from those phone calls. And all that is just going to help them get up to speed much faster. So one of the biggest hacks we use to save time is we read our customers' minds. Okay, so not quite. But what we do is, anytime we notice a question is being asked over and over and again, we write it down, and then it goes into one of our automated emails. So when a customer first signs up with us and first says, hey, for our publishing company, I'm interested in publishing my book, they get emails that say, hey, you're interested in publishing your book. Here's the top 10 questions we get from authors. Or they'll get an email that says, hey, your question's about book sizing, because we know we get this question all the time. So let's answer it for them before we get on phone calls and things like that with them. So again, it just saves time. They already know these key items. And the next big time saver that we use is, I have a section labeled in the guide, which is called Time Savers, and it will be links to YouTube videos that we've done, blog posts that we've written, so that if a customer asks a question, potentially in an email, and it's quite a long, complicated question, for example, where do you distribute my book? How does print on demand works? What the sales team can do is they can just pop that link to the YouTube video into the email, and then the customer can go and watch that detailed video, which is going to explain exactly how it works to them. Finally, before we get on to the bonus question, we're going to talk about best and worst. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to follow along for more. What I do with best and worst is I ask all of my salespeople to give me, after a couple of weeks, this might differ for your company, it depends how many sales calls your sales team are doing, and I say, what was your best phone call this week? What was your worst phone call this week? Send those to me and I will listen to them both. This allows me to get an understanding of what they think is a good sales call, what they think is a bad sales call, and if they're right, what they could improve on, what they could change, how I can improve the training process so that we get the most from these calls. And then the bonus tip, which I think is really important, is they've done a huge amount of studies where they've shown that if a sales team believe in the product they're selling, they will produce a better sales rate. So basically their brain is simply going to fill in the gap between, I really believe in this product, and then the outcome, which is selling the product, and the brain will largely fill in the gap. The reason for this is because they believe the product is good for the customer. And the best way that I've found to do this is regularly sharing the amazing reviews and testimonials you get from your customers with your sales team. Remind them on a weekly basis, daily basis if you can. If you just do this one thing, I guarantee your sales in your business will improve. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and also head to my website, patgw.com, to sign up to my newsletter for more tips like this. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.